Hello again. I thought I might say a few words today about home education, of which I am, of course, an enthusiastic supporter. I did not send my daughter to school for a single day. The chief reason for this was that I knew that I would be able to provide her with a better education than any school. But as the years passed, I began to see other benefits. Before talking about this, perhaps I can dispose of one or two of the main objections which people raise when this subject comes up. The most common concern, of course, centres around socialisation, there being a perception that school is useful or indeed vital for preparing children for adulthood and for getting on and mixing with other people. It is sometimes claimed that home educated children are at risk of not developing social skills. This is all very strange. Two things strike me about the idea, which is often the very first objection people mention when home education is discussed. The first is that the model of socialisation in British schools is so familiar that we sometimes forget how utterly bizarre it actually is and how little it prepares children for the real world. Where, other than the army or in prison, would you find a squad of 30 people, all varying in age by no more than a few months, expected to do everything together as a group? These people must ask permission for such a basic human need as using the lavatory, and more than that, they are expected to address their superiors as Sir. Hand on heart, how many viewers have in adult life been expected to ask permission before they can have a piss? And which of us have been compelled to address our line managers as Sir? This model might be suitable for a Victorian workhouse, but it's hardly typical of the real world that children will enter when they grow up. Another point about socialisation is that I have never in my whole life heard any parent of a school child being keen on the benefits of socialisation. Did you ever hear a mother say, "Gosh, I'm so pleased at the words which my son is learning from his friends at school"? It is usually the opposite case, and parents moan about the bad habits and slangy way of speaking which their children pick up at school. As one mother said to me when talking about the socialisation of her son, if I wanted him to burp, fart and spit in the street, I could teach him those things for myself. Parents do not speak well of socialisation of their school-aged children. Instead, they say things like, "I don't know where you picked up that sort of language, but you needn't think I'll put up with it here." The other thing which people ask about home education is how it is possible for one person to teach all those subjects, often things that they don't know much about. The answer to that is simple. If you don't know about some aspect of science or history, then you can buy second-hand books at charity shops, visit the local library, or find any amount of information on the internet, and then find a way of passing it on to your child. Then too, you're not limited to staying indoors. Home education doesn't just have to take place at home. If you're learning about the Middle Ages, then you can visit a castle. For biology, you can go to a zoo. When my daughter was learning about teeth when she was 8 or 9, we found a number of skulls, squirrel, skull, she had to chop the head off a dead squirrel, birds, lizards. We put those heads into the compost heap to decompose. Then we bleached them. That way you can actually touch the teeth and see how they fit in the skull. One time we found a dead fox in the road which had been killed by a car. I dragged it home and then hacked off its head with a spade. That made a perfect specimen to examine because every tooth has a different function. With a fox there are even carnassials, a little bit like scissor teeth, which you find in carnivores like lions. Once the child reaches an age to take GCSEs, it's possible to find the entire subject specification online and see in great detail precisely what he or she will need to know for the examination. That way you can learn the topic yourself and then transmit it to the child. The best bit about home education is that your child is not exposed to unhealthy influences such as moral relativism and so on. I raised my daughter according to certain religious precepts, and I made sure that she understood that right and wrong are not relative but absolute, as integral to the structure of the universe as gravity and electromagnetism. Keeping her away from pernicious stuff like that was very important to me. I might mention that religion was a big part of my reason for doing this, for not sending her to school. I know that some people are annoyed when I talk about Islam and Christianity, but you see, I find these things very important. This is why, of course, I have more than one Bible in the home. I've got the King James and the Good News version and the Catholic Dwayne one, and I'm afraid to say more than one Quran as well. Don't even ask about the Talmud. I think that anybody who has reservations about modern schools might be well advised to consider educating their child at home. From an educational point of view, it cannot be bettered, and although there are some disadvantages, I think that these are greatly outweighed by the many advantages to the enterprise.